They wheeled her into the ICU with barely a pulse. Machines hummed, alarms screamed, and her mother clutched a crumpled wallet. The nurse's words cut sharper than any scalpel. No payment, no bed. In that instant, life itself had a price tag, and the bill was more than they could ever afford. If stories like this make your blood boil, subscribe now, because what you're about to hear will change the way you look at hospitals forever. The ICU smelled of bleach and despair. Every surface gleamed sterile white, but beneath that cleanliness lingered something rotten, a system where survival depended not on urgency, but on money. Amira was only 23. Her chest rose and fell in shallow, rattling breaths as two paramedics rushed her in on a stretcher. Her mother, Layla, ran beside them, clutching a purse so thin it barely bulged. "Please," Layla begged, her voice already breaking. "She needs help. She's not breathing right." The admitting nurse didn't even look at Amira. She slid a clipboard across the counter, nails tapping the plastic. "Deposit first. 40,000 up front, then we'll prepare a bed." 40? Layla's words collapsed into a sob. "I don't have that. She's dying." The paramedics exchanged glances, torn between training and protocol. They had done their duty, delivered the patient to the hospital. Beyond these doors, they were powerless. One of them leaned closer to Layla and whispered, "If you can't pay, they'll send her away. Try to fight it. Don't leave." But the nurse's eyes were cold. She was used to this theater of desperation. Mothers crying, fathers bargaining, families dropping jewelry, begging with receipts. Every story ended the same way. Either money appeared or a body disappeared. Layla fumbled in her bag, a handful of coins, a faded insurance card that had expired last year, a photo of Amira smiling in better days. She pressed it to her chest like a shield. "Please," she whispered. "She's my only child. I'll clean floors. I'll sign papers. Just don't let her die here." The nurse exhaled through her nose, unimpressed. "Rules are rules." She clicked her pen and pointed to the line on the form where payment was required. Behind them, Amira's monitor let out a shrill, continuous scream. Layla screamed too, but hers was the sound of a mother realizing that her daughter's life was being auctioned off in real time, and she didn't even have a ticket to bid. The ICU doors swung open with a hiss, but not for Amira. A man in a tailored suit strolled past with his phone glued to his ear. Behind him, two nurses wheeled in an elderly patient surrounded by family. No one asked them for cash. No clipboard, no deposit. Their surname carried weight, and that was enough. Layla saw it all. Her chest burned with humiliation, but anger cut through her fear. She grabbed the nurse's sleeve. "Why them? Why not her?" The nurse shook her off with practiced indifference. "Because they can pay, do you understand?" A doctor in a white coat finally approached. His badge read, "Dr. Hamid." He barely glanced at Amira before speaking in clipped tones. "She needs oxygen and stabilization immediately, but without deposit we cannot allocate resources." "Resources?" Layla's voice trembled. "She's not a number, she's my child." Dr. Hamid's eyes flicked to the clock, then back to the form. "If you sign for liability and agree to full payment later, we might proceed, but if you fail to pay, we sue, we seize property, and you face prison time. Do you want that?" Layla's hands shook violently. What property? A leaking roof? A second-hand stove? She had nothing but Amira. She pressed her forehead against her daughter's damp hand, whispering, "Stay with me, Habibti, stay." A janitor passing by stopped for a moment, his mop dripping water on the floor. His eyes lingered on Amira, then on Layla's crumpled body. He wanted to speak, but fear sealed his lips. He had seen too many nights end with corpses rolled out under white sheets. Suddenly, Amira's chest convulsed. The monitor screeched louder, the line flattening toward silence. Nurses moved instinctively, but then froze, waiting for a nod from the doctor. Dr. Hamid's jaw tightened. For the briefest second, humanity flickered in his gaze. Then the bureaucracy drowned it. Not until the papers are signed. And in that unbearable pause, those endless 3 seconds when a pen meant more than a pulse, Layla did something she never imagined she could. She climbed onto the stretcher, shielding Amira with her own body. Her voice, cracked and raw, roared through the sterile halls. "If you let her die, the world will know. I swear to God, I will make sure every soul hears how you murder the poor." The room went silent. For the first time, the system hesitated. The silence was unbearable. Only the flat beep of Amira's monitor filled the air, cutting through the white walls like a blade. Nurses shifted uneasily. The janitor stopped mopping, his eyes wide. Even the suited man in the corridor paused his call to glance inside. Layla's scream hung in the sterile air. She clutched her daughter like a soldier protecting a wounded comrade on the battlefield. Her face was streaked with tears, but her eyes burned with fire. "Do something," she demanded. "She's a human being, not a bank account." Dr. Hamid froze, the clipboard heavy in his hand. Years of training told him to act. Years of policy told him not to. His lips parted, but no words came. He looked at the nurse, at the growing crowd of staff peeking through the glass windows. Too many witnesses. The nurse hissed, "Doctor, you'll lose your license." "Better my license than her life," Dr. Hamid snapped, and for the first time that night, the dam broke. He shoved the clipboard aside, grabbed the oxygen mask, and pressed it to Amira's face. "Prepare adrenaline! Move, now!" The nurses jolted into action, as if awakening from a trance. One sprinted for a crash cart, another began chest compressions. The room erupted into chaos, but this time, chaos that fought for life, not against it. Layla slid off the stretcher, sobbing with relief. "Thank you. Thank you." But the victory was fragile. As the team worked, the hospital administrator stormed in. A tall man in a grey suit, his tie knotted like a noose. His eyes swept the scene with cold fury. "What is happening here? Who authorized treatment without payment?" Dr. Hamid didn't stop pressing the mask to Amira's face. His voice was steady. "I did. She's critical. I couldn't stand by." The administrator's jaw clenched. "Then you'll pay for it. From your salary, every syringe, every pill." The doctor's hands trembled, but he didn't let go. "Send me the bill." Layla stared at him, stunned. In a world where money weighed more than breath, a stranger had dared to put her daughter's life above his career. The monitor beeped again, weak but steady. A pulse. Amira was alive, for now, but Layla knew the fight had only begun. The faint return of Amira's pulse was like a fragile candle flickering in a storm. The oxygen hissed, the monitor chirped, and for a heartbeat, hope filled the room. But the administrator's voice sliced through it all. "You think this ends here?" "No, doctor, you've broken protocol. This hospital doesn't run on charity. If this woman cannot pay, she will be removed." Layla stepped forward, trembling but unyielding. Her voice cracked, yet carried like thunder. "Remove her, and you remove me too. I will not leave my daughter. You'll have to drag my body out with hers." Her words ignited murmurs among the staff. A young nurse whispered, "She's right. We can't just—" But the administrator silenced her with a glare. Dr. Hamid, still bent over Amira, muttered without looking up. "She needs stabilization, at least 24 hours of observation. If you cut her off now, she won't survive the night. The administrator's cold reply. Then she shouldn't have come here in the first place. The words landed like a slap across the room. The janitor dropped his mop with a clatter. A security guard at the door shifted uncomfortably, his hand lingering on his radio, but not raising it. Everyone could feel it. This was no longer medicine. This was cruelty dressed in rules. Layla's knees weakened, but she straightened her spine. She stepped closer to the administrator, her eyes blazing. You think we're powerless because we're poor? You think no one will care? I will scream. I will go outside and shout until the whole city knows that this hospital sells life to the highest bidder. The administrator sneered, leaning in so close she could smell the bitterness of his coffee-stained breath. Try it. No one will listen to you. You're just a desperate mother. By morning, your girl will be gone and you'll still be poor. For a moment, Layla's heart faltered. His words were poison, dripping into the cracks of her fear. But then she saw Amira's chest rise, weak but alive. That single breath was defiance itself. No, Layla whispered, more to herself than to him. Then louder, no, she will live, and you will not silence me. She stormed toward the glass doors of the ICU, her voice carrying through the corridors like a rallying cry. Everyone, look at what they do here. They let the poor die unless we pay with blood. Is this your hospital? Is this your justice? Heads turned. Patients in waiting chairs, relatives clutching forms, interns with clipboards, all froze. The hospital, usually filled with hushed compliance, now vibrated with unease. For the first time, the administrator looked nervous. The lobby of the hospital stirred like a hive. Families waiting for news stood up, drawn by the sound of Layla's voice echoing down the corridor. She banged on the glass of the ICU with both fists, shouting, her words sharp and trembling. They let my daughter die because I don't have money. They put a price tag on breath. Look what they do to us. The administrator rushed forward, hissing to security. Get her out now! 2 guards moved in, but hesitation slowed their steps. Everyone was watching. The janitor, still gripping his mop handle like a staff, muttered, She's telling the truth. A murmur spread among the crowd. She's right. My cousin died here. Same thing. They turned my brother away. The weight of suppressed stories pressed against the sterile walls until they threatened to crack. Inside the ICU, Amira fought for air beneath the mask, her lashes fluttering. Dr. Hamid kept steady hands on the equipment, but his voice rose with urgency. She needs peace, not chaos. If she slips now, it'll be because of you. He barked at the administrator. But Layla refused to be silenced. She tore at her scarf, raising it high like a banner, her voice breaking with fury and grief. Tonight it's my child, tomorrow it could be yours. They don't care who you are. Without money, we're already dead to them. Phones appeared in the crowd, screens glowing, cameras recording. Her cries were no longer just bouncing off the hospital walls. They were being broadcast, captured, shared. The administrator's face paled. He lunged toward one of the guards. Shut it down! Confiscate those phones! But it was too late. The tide had shifted. Nurses whispered behind masks. Doctors exchanged uneasy glances. Even the guard holding his radio dropped his eyes to the floor, unwilling to move against her. And in that moment, Amira's monitor spiked. Beep, beep, beep. The sound of life refusing to surrender. Layla fell to her knees, pressing her palms together, whispering, Stay with me, Habibti. The world is watching now. The administrator realized the truth in her words. For the first time, he wasn't the one holding power. By now, the lobby was no longer a waiting room. It was a protest ground. Families who had once sat silently, afraid of losing their place in the system, were on their feet. Some shouted, some wept, Others raised their phones higher to record. The sterile air of fear had shifted into something electric. Anger, unity. "Enough is enough!" a man yelled from the back, holding a photo of his brother. "They let him die last year because we couldn't pay. His blood is on their hands." Another woman shouted, "They turned us away with our newborn. What kind of hospital denies a child?" The stories burst forth, one after another, a dam breaking. Layla's voice had unlocked their silence. The administrator stood frozen, his power dissolving with each voice that joined. He barked orders at security, but the guards didn't move. The nurses behind the counter avoided his eyes. Even the receptionist slid her phone into her pocket, pretending to type, secretly recording. Dr. Hamid stepped out of the ICU, his gloves still smeared with Amira's blood. His voice was calm, but it carried the weight of truth. This girl would already be dead if I had followed the rules. Rules written by people like him. He pointed at the administrator, whose face turned a shade darker. "This is not medicine, this is extortion." The crowd erupted. Cheers, gasps, applause. The administrator stammered, "You'll lose your license for this." But Hamid didn't flinch. "Maybe, but I won't lose my soul." Inside the ICU, Amira's monitor steadied into a fragile rhythm. Beep, beep, beep. Her chest rose stronger, as though the fight outside was pumping air into her lungs. Layla pressed her forehead against the glass, tears streaming, whispering to herself. She hears us. She knows she's not alone. Then, like a spark catching dry grass, the protest spread. People in the waiting room stormed the hallways, demanding doctors for their loved ones. A young nurse, emboldened, ripped down a payment first sign from the wall and tossed it into the trash. The hospital, once a fortress of silent suffering, was now a battleground of truth. And the administrator, once untouchable, found himself cornered, not by one desperate mother, but by an army of them. The chanting grew louder, shaking the polished floors of the hospital. Life before money, life before money. It rolled like thunder, carried by dozens of voices that had been silent too long. The administrator tried to push through the crowd, but every step was blocked by furious families. Cameras followed him, capturing every twitch of his jaw, every bead of sweat. He was no longer the man with power. He was the face of corruption, cornered and exposed. Layla stood in the center, her scarf still clutched in her fist like a flag. She raised her voice above the noise. "This place was built with our taxes, our sweat, our labor. Yet they make us pay to live. Tonight, they wanted to bury my daughter in debt or in the ground, but no more, no more." Applause, cheers, tears. Mothers hugged their children tighter. Fathers clenched their fists. Even the janitor raised his mop like a spear, grinning through the tension. Then a sound broke through the chaos. Sirens outside. Police cars screeched to a halt at the hospital entrance. Blue lights flashed against the glass doors. For a moment, fear rippled through the crowd. Would they be arrested, beaten back into silence? The administrator smirked, straightening his suit. "Finally," he muttered, "order will be restored." But when the officers entered, the cameras immediately swung toward them. The first cop glanced around, saw dozens of phones recording, and froze. His partner whispered, "It's already online, it's everywhere." Indeed, on a patient's tablet, a live stream ticked with thousands of views climbing by the second. Comments flooded the screen. "This is criminal. Shut 'em down. Justice for the poor." The police chief stepped forward, looking from the administrator to Layla. His expression was unreadable. The crowd hushed, waiting. Then, to everyone's shock, the chief turned to the administrator. "Sir, you're under investigation. Until further notice, this hospital is to prioritize emergency care. Payment or not. Gasps filled the room. The administrator sputtered, "You can't! This is private property." But his words drowned in the roar of the crowd. Relief, anger, triumph, all crashing together. Inside the ICU, Amira stirred. Her eyelids fluttered open for the first time. Weak, trembling, she whispered through the mask, "Mama." Layla collapsed against the glass, her hands pressed flat, sobbing with joy. "I'm here, Habibti, I'm here." And in that instant, surrounded by strangers who had become allies, she realized something bigger than her daughter's survival. They had cracked the system's silence. This wasn't just her fight anymore, it was everyone's. The night bled into morning, but the hospital was no longer the same place it had been. The signs demanding deposits were ripped from the walls. Nurses whispered with relief as they treated patients without looking over their shoulders. Families, once paralyzed by fear, stood taller, exchanging numbers, vowing to fight together beyond these sterile halls. The administrator was escorted out by officers, his tie hanging loose, his protests ignored. For the first time, the man who had held lives hostage found himself powerless, just another man under scrutiny. In the ICU, Amira's condition stabilized. Her cheeks had color again, her breaths stronger. Layla never left her side, holding her daughter's hand as if it were the last rope tethering her to the world. Dr. Hamid sat on a stool nearby, exhaustion etched into his face. Layla reached for his hand. "You risked everything," she whispered. "Why?" The doctor's eyes softened. "Because I became a doctor to heal, not to profit. If saving her costs me my career, then so be it. Some things are worth more than money." Layla's tears fell freely, but this time they weren't from despair. They were from gratitude, from the knowledge that kindness still survived in a world corrupted by greed. By sunrise, news crews had gathered outside. The footage had gone viral. Millions watched as a poor mother stood against a machine designed to crush her. Commentators called it the night the walls of silence cracked. When Amira opened her eyes again, Layla leaned close, whispering, "You lived, Habibti, not because we were rich, but because we refused to be silent." In a world where systems sell survival, silence is the currency that keeps them alive. But one voice, raw, desperate, unyielding, can shatter walls, awaken courage, and remind us that dignity is priceless. If this story moved you, subscribe now, because the world needs more voices that refuse to be silent. Together we can make sure no one is ever told again, pay or die.